Perhaps there is a part of you that has felt lost for a while. Or maybe you've been sheltering it for so long that you're no longer sure if you can ever get it back. But what if it isn't lost? I think a lot of us know what it feels like to become estranged from something true within ourselves. Not because it disappeared, but because at some point it felt safer to dim it, to soften it, to tuck it away, to protect it by keeping it out of sight. And after a while, you can start to wonder if that part of you is even still there. I wrote this poem titled Essence from that place, and I want to read it to you now. Oh, hello. It's you. I apologize for covering you up. I wasn't sure if you were ready to be seen. I was hiding you, protecting you, for a time when I wouldn't be insecure anymore. For a while, I didn't know if you were really there, or how you would ever be able to make it out here on your own. But now I know I've only been in your way. You managed to shine through despite my feeble efforts to shield you, to save you from the hate in this world. It is no match for you and your gentle spirit. I keep coming back to this idea that sometimes what we call losing ourselves isn't really loss. Sometimes it's hiding. Sometimes it's years of self-protection slowly turning into self-concealment. And I don't mean that in a condemning way. I think for a lot of us, the hiding began honestly. It began for a reason. Because something in us felt tender, or too bright, or vulnerable, or too exposed. And we weren't sure if the world knew how to hold it gently enough. So we covered it. Not because it wasn't real, and not because it wasn't beautiful, but maybe because it was. I think that is the part of what makes this kind of hiding so painful. It is not always the hiding of something false or shallow or performative. Sometimes it's the hiding of the truest thing. Our voice, a softness, a longing, a way of seeing, a creativity, a tenderness, a spark, an essence. And when you have been covering that for long enough, you can start to confuse quiet with gone. You can start to believe that because something hasn't been easy to access, that it no longer exists. But I don't think that's true. I think hidden is different than gone. And I think covered is different than erased. I think the truest parts of us can go quiet for a long time without disappearing. And maybe that changes the work. Maybe the work isn't to become someone completely new. Maybe the work is not to manufacture a more authentic self from scratch. Maybe the work is uncovering. Maybe it is remembering. Maybe it is making room for what was always there. underneath the fear, underneath the self-editing, underneath the waiting. Because I think a lot of us spend years waiting until we're healed enough, confident enough, clear enough, certain enough, successful enough, articulate enough, beautiful enough, ready enough, as if the truest parts of ourselves need some future version of ourselves in order to be allowed to come into the light. But maybe that future version of ourselves is waiting for this version to simply come out of hiding. Maybe there's no magical threshold where suddenly you're no longer afraid and no longer self-conscious and no longer tender. And then finally you are granted permission to be fully. Maybe it happens more quietly than that. Maybe it begins with noticing that the you-ness of you is still in there, still flickering, still breathing, still pressing against the container we put her in, longing to expand. And maybe what once served as protection eventually becomes the very thing standing in the way. I think that has been one of the hardest realizations for me in this season of my life, that something can start as wisdom or survival and still eventually outlive its usefulness. That you can hide for good reasons and still, at some point, need to come out. That you can be grateful for what protected you and also recognize when it has started to cost you something. Because there is a cost to staying hidden too long. There is a cost to slowly diminishing something true until it is barely recognizable. There is a cost to keeping your essence under wraps because you're afraid of how it will be received. And I don't just mean publicly. I mean even in private, even with yourself, even in the quiet. So I want to leave you with a few questions. Not questions you need to answer perfectly. Not questions that you need to solve tonight. Just something to sit with. If they meet you where you are right now, in this version of yourself. Is there a part of you that has gone quiet? Not gone, but quiet. Is there something true in you that you've been calling not ready for so long that you've started believing it may never return? What have you been protecting by keeping that part of yourself hidden? And has that protection begun to cost you something? Is there a way that you have been standing in your own way, not out of failure, but out of fear or tenderness or uncertainty? What if the part of you that feels far away is not gone at all? What if she has only been waiting for a little more room to breathe? What if your work right now is not reinvention? What if it is uncovering? What if it is simply this: becoming a safe enough place within yourself for what is true to be able to come into the light. I think the parts of us that hide usually had a reason. So this is not an invitation to shame yourself for hiding. It is not an accusation. It is not, why did you disappear? Why did you wait so long? Why did you cover it up? It is gentler than that. It's more like, oh, there you are. I wondered if you were still there. And maybe that is where return begins. Not with force, not with performance, not with suddenly becoming louder or bolder or more visible than what feels true, but with recognition, with honesty, with a willingness to stop calling something lost when maybe it has simply been hidden, with an openness to truly believe that your essence has survived everything that has tried to make it smaller, that it is still there, that it shines through, that the hate in this world is no match for a gentle spirit that was made to endure. And maybe, just maybe, it's not too late. Maybe it is time to stop covering, to stop waiting, to stop assuming that what is most true in you needs to be hidden in order to be protected and safe. Maybe it's time to come out of hiding. If you want, you might take a few minutes after this just to sit quietly, or write in a journal, or ask yourself what part of you feels like it's longing for air and light right now. And if this reflection met you somewhere real, I'd love to know what part stayed with you. Oh, there you are. I see you now.